Stole my thunder on the thank yous. I was going to start out with thanking Keith and the whole Pontiac team for having us here, for sponsoring lunch. So thank you, and thank you for having me here and my esteemed panelists. So I am Heather Carver, Chief Revenue Officer at Freestar. So we power the programmatic tech and monetization for over 500 publishers. Before that, I spent 10 years at Magnite working with publishers. A lot of these people here I've known for over 10 years and worked with them as publisher clients when I was on the SSP side. So all of us have a lot of ad tech experience. In fact, I counted it up before I came here. We have a combined over 80 years of ad tech experience. So hopefully you'll learn a thing or two from us.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. And most of the time was spent on the pub side. I know you did a little Google thing stint for a bit, but.
I sold to publishers at Google. Still
so
pub side.
Still pub side. And then we all joked when we were doing our panel prep that the DOJ trial has been a highlight reel from our careers in ad tech. So it's kind of fun to go down memory lane with all those articles that were written and kind of listening to some of the excerpts from the trial. And we've all lived through the rise of programmatic. So in the early the late 2000s when RTB really hit the scene, and then in 2015 there was the kind of tipping point where programmatic buying was actually more than kind of the traditional direct manual buying of the early days. So that was really exciting. And then you saw the rise of header bidding. I think today about 90% of digital display advertising is transacted programmatically. So again, we've lived through all of this and have a lot of good perspectives to share. So now I'm going to hand it over to the panelists. I'll start at the end here, and you guys can introduce yourselves. Obviously, we see up here what companies you're with, but would also love a little fun fact about yourself or your company that you're working for.
Sure. Rich Zeroth, head of programmatic yield at the Weather Company. Hope it's not too weird that I'm sitting in the other chair. Just seems like not meant to be a power play. Just seems like a more efficient use of space. Industry fun fact, I thought about this one. So Keith Guberman, who just did all the round of thank yous, I used to be his boss's boss back in the early 2000s when he was a lowly revenue analyst. Smart kid, slight issue with punctuality, especially on Fridays. And in terms of, overall, prognosis on future success in the industry, iffy at best, I would have said. He went on to another gig, we stayed in touch, and then we connected again professionally a couple years later. He was doing some consulting for a well-known programmatic consulting company, where he came to our offices and explained to me what this new thing called header bidding was and how that worked. And I was like, okay, this kid might have potential. And then, decade later, here I am at his conference looking at his kingdom. I've pretty much got the same gig I had 15 years ago and probably wearing the same shirt. So I obviously, underestimated him. But yeah, that's my little fun fact.
That's good. It's a good one.
Hi, Jessie Gruber. I do not have a fun fact like that, but I wish I did. So I've been on the publisher side for apparently collectively 80 years, which is gross. I run programmatic strategy for Everyday Health Group. We are a division of Ziff Davis. My industry fun fact was that Ziff Davis just acquired CNET, which, if you go back 20 years, CNET had acquired Ziff Davis. So it all kind of comes full circle, and you never know who your boss is going to be one day. You never know what company you're going to work for one day, because you could end up buying them or being sold to them. So
always be nice.
Always be nice, yeah.
I agree. So hi everyone, I'm Jana Meron. I'm the VP of Revenue Operations and Data at the Washington Post. And my fun fact is that if you come to our office and you say, I'm going up to the Washington Post, the woman in the lobby will say she does not know what you're talking about.
Love that. Fun fact about Freestar, I guess I'll throw myself in here. Our legal name is actually Publisher First. I don't know how many people know that, but fun fact.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I thought so. So our founder of our company is still involved, and he started out as a publisher and then realized all the pain points of being a publisher and having to run the tech yourself. So named the company legally Publisher First. So to kick things off, I want to talk about some of the biggest headwinds that you guys have seen last year heading into 2025. I am an eternal optimist, so I do, I want to see things glass half full. Would love to also hear about what you think the biggest opportunities are, whether being a publisher, collaborating with buyers. So kind of want to get both sides of the coin here, the good, the bad, the ugly, but then the good, really. Jana, if you want to go ahead and start.
Okay, well, so we've had a lot of headwinds at the Washington Post this year, but mostly it has been more about like the technology is changing and we need to up-level and upskill and, right, those have been the biggest challenges is, right, we collectively have an 80 years worth of experience, but a lot of the people who work for us have like 3. So, it's very hard from that standpoint. And then on the
So you need good technology providers and others to
You need good technology providers. You need good people. You also need curious employees, right? Like curious. And so what the good part is that, first of all, it's the election, so it's like the Super Bowl at the Washington Post right now. And so
I think for a lot of publishers, it's a good thing for ad spend.
100%. And so I think that the industry is coming around to brand safety, or suitability. We can't call it safety anymore, right? And we're starting to think differently together, which is, I think, the thing we have to look forward to the most.
I mean, I feel like can't be a publisher and not say SEO as being a major issue that we're kind of all facing. But to put the positive spin on it, and I think we're going to touch on a little bit later, is like really looking at what we have and looking at diversifying that and how we can better serve our users, and not just the traditional ways that we always have by relying on Google to send people to us. So there's kind of a lot that's going to happen with that over, forever, and has always been happening. That's one of the big ones for us. And then kind of, a little bit with what Jana was saying is everything has gotten so much more complex over the past, I feel like it really ramped up probably the past 10 years with like the introduction of programmatic and all of that. And I literally still remember being in front of a whiteboard, being like, what is this thing? And trying to map out within GAM our waterfall. And I think we were with Rubicon at the time, I was at the Wall Street Journal. And things have just gotten increasingly more difficult, and we have less staff to do that. But I think with a little bit of the rise of AI, we're hoping to kind of level the playing field a little bit with the issues with like technology, and then with our staff. So that's my.
Yeah, for us, it might be kind of unique here, but I think other publishers deal with this too. But we're trying to figure out a way to how should I phrase it? Lighten the ad footprint on our pages to increase page speed load, improve user experience, but without taking a revenue hit, right? And that can be really tricky. And then semi-related to that, which kind of dovetails into what the opportunity is for us, is we completely relaunched our iOS app this year, the Weather Channel app. And for those of you who use it, hopefully you've noticed it. Hopefully you agree. Like, it looks so much better and it's so much slicker. And then with that, I think, gives us the opportunity to kind of have fresh engagement with our user base. And what that allows us to do is look for new value props, new ways to engage with them, to see if we can, how can we go about increasing registration, increasing our subscriber base, with the ultimate goal of obviously building up our authenticated user traffic that we have, that then we can use whatever curveball browsers are going to throw at us to 2025. I'm sure it's going to be something, but we'll be in a better spot to mitigate any monetization downside there if we have more authenticated users.
Great. Yeah, I see that as a common trend. We hear from the publishers we work with that it's increasingly complex, and so we help provide wrapper technology because publishers just don't know all the different identity solutions and CMPs and all the different players and extensions you can plug into pre-bid. It is really complex, and if you don't have big teams, it's definitely a big struggle. I think another thing on our end is SEO and all the Google algorithm changes, search generative experience that is not driving as much traffic organically to publishers' pages. So you have to think about ways to have deeper relationships with your consumers and get them to come to your site directly, right, and have those closer relationships. So that's a lot of focus that we talk about with our publishers, SEO and audience development and having more first-party data. So speaking of, if traffic's down, I've talked to a bunch of other publishers I don't work directly with, but just in the industry, about other ways of diversifying revenue and other ways to bring value to consumers, but also value to advertisers and brands that they're working with directly. So curious if you guys have other strategies on revenue diversification.
Yeah, I mean, we have a diverse portfolio of sites and products, and I think we kind of look at them all together and how we can collectively rise the tide on that one. So whether it is subscriptions, where it makes sense to start putting in a login here that actually gives the user something back versus just being like, oh, log in to do nothing and just provide us with your email. So that piece, we have other subscriptions. We have the Lose It app, which tracks your weight loss. So there's a lot of things within that that we're looking at in terms of rewarded or different types of email products and things like that. And obviously commerce and all of that getting integrated across the board.
Yeah, I'll take pretty much everything Jessie said. We're trying that too. In addition, at the Weather Company, right, there's a lot of, we've got aviation products, right? There's hardware, there's software, a lot of data products that, that we work with DSPs and buyers, weather effects targeting, things like that. So, but by and large, right, it's specifically programmatic advertising is still a lion's share of where a lot of our revenue is coming from. Obviously there's social, but social's been tricky because the posts that get a lot of the likes are hurricanes and disasters, and that can be really hard to monetize, which kind of leads us to trying to figure out ways to create more content, which is almost sort of similar like a new revenue strategy, more skin and health content and allergies and space and technology, pets, things like that, just to try to get users to do more than just check the weather and bail when they come to our properties.
Yeah, I think also it's not just diversifying your revenue streams, it's also diversifying your revenue products and other ways that you can use data and ads to do something different. I don't know what that different thing is, but that is where we all, that's where we have fun, is, tell me what you're going to do to me next so I can figure out what else I can do. Right?
Problem solvers.
Yeah.
Give me your problem, and I will solve it.
Tell me how your ad server hurt you today.
It is a couch therapy session.
It is.
I'll leave you guys to it then. So, this kind of is a follow-off from that question, but obviously there are a lot of buyers in the room today, and it's really important, I think, for buyers and publishers to collaborate and kind of understand right, there's a lot of tools like an IS and Double Verify that can classify inventory a certain way and maybe cuts out the publisher from having a direct conversation with a buyer. So I'm just curious from your perspectives, how do you guys feel like buyers and publishers can better work together, and how do you guys better work with buyers to show the value and maybe something additive to obviously the tools of DSPs and things that the buyers are using, but curious on sort of best practices around that and how you work with buyers to kind of shed some more light on your inventory and how you can best work with them to help them meet their goals.
So from the Washington Post standpoint, we're working directly with advertisers and really getting into the weeds on what is it, because advertisers will often come to us and say, I really want to reach your audience, but I don't want to run a news. And so, right, or they come to us and they'll say, I really want to buy your audience, but here are the 27 topics that I can't be anywhere around. And then they say, and I can't get scale on my audience. Well, guess what? Your audience is reading that thing that you don't want to be around. So for us, it's about explaining what happens, right? Like the impact of the behaviors and working with us. Like, tell me what you want to do. We can help you do it and keep you in a safe environment, no problem. But if we're not having the conversation and you're just calling me to say, I'm getting a lot of DV flags or IAS flags on my buy and I don't understand, and then I'm going to pull URL reports and I'm like, did you mean to block games.washingtonpost.com or, crosswords. It's literally like that. So it's about having the conversations and not just pushing the buttons.
Yeah. I think the conversations actually have gotten better, and you guys can disagree with me, in the past year. I think conversations that we were having 2-3 years ago with buyers around things like that, it was a lot of confusion, and we were really talking completely different languages between, we're all working through programmatic pipes, but between a DSP and an SSP. And then forget, the publisher probably has their own language as well, and the advertiser's sitting there with their own language. I do feel like that has come a little bit closer together, and I think it's taken a lot of time of having those conversations. I know, I've been on more calls this past year with buyers than I've ever been on, which I think is a good thing. So it is, although we want to rely fully on the programmatic pipes to send the right signals and for you guys to be, to see everything in the way that, it needs to look into the DSPs, I think having those one-to-one conversations, there really is no way to not do that and come out with a good outcome. So I do think that the conversation piece is helpful, and I know we also are trying to educate our SSPs a little bit more on our inventory, what that looks like and what we can and can't do, so that they're more armed with what that looks like, so they can also go out and talk to the DSPs, because obviously it is unrealistic for us all to be having these conversations, but it is the more conversations and the more helpful we can be along the line, I think has been useful.
Yeah, a bit of a cop-out answer, but it kind of depends on what the buyer's ultimate goals are, right? Weather is a pretty ubiquitous term, and it's vertical agnostic, right? Obviously, you've got travel, you've got, home and garden, you've got apparel, you've got food, you've got, even auto to a certain degree, right? So depending what their goals are, whether it's, us creating a custom ad execution on, times of the day, or, time when the weather is at a certain level where it makes sense, or whether it's using our weather, weather effects, data targeting product. I'm not the sales guy at Weather, so, anyone wants to, I can direct you to our CRO or head of programmatic sales. But, kind of depending what the buyer's goals are, I'm pretty confident we can create the product mix that's going to work good for you.
Yeah, I think that's always important, just really having that dialogue. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the, in the open market, for example, between the pipes and maybe the right not the right signals are being sent. So I've seen it, as Jessie said, get better over the last year or two of having more open dialogue about, what signals need to be passed, what are you actually buying, what are you after, and then making sure you're kind of, whether it's on a direct one-to-one buy basis or even in the open market or one-to-many type deal basis, like you're sending the right things and you're setting up your inventory in a way based on, even if they're just vanity metrics that buyers are looking for, like viewability, high VCR, whatever it is. And if you're not sending the right inventory, your inventory doesn't hit those thresholds, you're being left out. And so at Freestar, we partner really closely with our SSPs, like Index Exchange and Magnite, and have gotten a lot of good feedback on what it is that the buyers are looking for. So this is a good segue, I think, into the next question, where I'm really going to channel Eric Seufert here with his saying that everything is an ad network. I think he was really referring to like the rise of retail media networks, but there's been, I was trying to get a count, ChatGPT really let me down on this one, but there's been countless articles written about curation these days, so whether it's your SSPs doing curation, whether it's data players like Autogen, you've got some like @Curate, Multi-Local, who are working with SSPs to curate inventory. I am personally a big fan of it. I love, again, having more of an open dialogue with the SSPs. I like that SSPs are trying to, if historically 90% of the net new dollars in the digital space were going to Google, Facebook, TikTok, right? I think this is a way for SSPs who have scale and others to bring more of those dollars into the open web and help support the open web and news and quality content that's being created. So again, I'm a big fan of it, but I think there's some growing controversy around it. So I'm curious, especially with publishers who have direct sales teams, so curious on how you all think about this, this topic. I'll start with you, Jana, since you're to my left. Right.
Everything's an ad network. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, I agree in that. Now I sort of forgot what I was going to say.
You agree, everything's an ad network.
Well, yes, everything's an ad network. But I love curation because it gives us the opportunity to prove it to advertisers that the inventory works in a different way. And it creates an additional revenue stream. So, right, we all need to figure out how to make money while we sleep. Curation does that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree. I think curation's great. I think, our direct sales team, when they first hear about it, it's just because they don't understand what's actually happening. Mm-hmm. But when we start getting into no one's curating my inventory and saying, this is diabetes type 2, like side effects of drugs. That's not, I think they're afraid of something like that happening. It's obviously more on the generic side. So I think that there's a place for all of it, and we love it.
Same.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on how good they are at doing the curating, right? You could do it really well, or you could use crappy data in curation, and it could turn out to be a disaster, right? So I don't know. I tend to think bring it on, right? As long as, assuming it's deal ID enabled, right? As long as myself as a publisher has insight into what's coming in through that channel, right? Who are the buyers and who are the advertisers, right? So we can monitor it and measure it. And then, if I'm wearing rose-colored glasses here, it'll give us an opportunity maybe to forge relationships with new clients, form, more robust and, strategic partnerships, and then, frankly, puts the onus on our programmatic sales team, right, to sell them something that they're not getting through the curation deal, right? It can't be just the same stuff that they can get in the open market or through a curated deal with a higher price tag, right? There has to be some sort of differentiator, whether it's a custom creative execution or a higher priority in the ad server. Yep. But yeah, I'll take that Pepsi challenge. So yeah, I think we'll see what happens, but yeah, I say bring it on.
I think there's been a lot of articles written about the fees, but if you're a publisher and you're using header bidding, everything is net bidding into your auction, and if the fees are higher, it's just not going to win. And then the buyer should be able to measure, right, are these deals hitting their KPIs? I do think probably the biggest and best SSPs will become more of a, that is my prediction, more of a high volume, lower fees, kind of like a transaction, like credit card transaction fee rather than, right, if you can kind of gobble up bigger budgets, you can take lower fees and then hopefully everybody wins, buyers, publishers, probably see a lot of that, that happening, having a lot more conversations around fees and being more efficient in that path. And again, I think there are some leaders in this space right now that are moving in that direction to not have more of these ad tech tax fees by doing this curation, and hopefully everyone will win that way. So I don't think it's going anywhere.
I also think, though, there's something else that somebody mentioned to me. I don't know if you guys have heard about this notion, but the curated deals potentially, and again, somebody said this to me, so I don't know if it's true, but
Good caveat.
I'm saying it. I don't know if it's true, but the SSPs can change the priority of the curation to be like the SSPs are messing with the prioritization inside of their pipe for curation. I don't understand it, but I know that that's happening, and then now that's where it gets a little bit.
That gets murky without the transparency into how you're managing my yield within your own exchange.
Yeah. So that's where I think the
Part
potential
2 coming soon.
controversy could
I haven't
be.
heard that.
Coming to Ad Exchanger in the
Again.
next 2 weeks.
Somebody mentioned it to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't yet had the time to push on the button.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that goes kind of back to what we were saying about the complexities of all of this, is that you think on the surface that like curation sounds like a great idea and and then like you start getting into like a little bit of the mechanics, and it's like, well, how did you not know that they were doing this? Who is supposed to know? Who's supposed to be policing that?
right. And do I know that the fee is higher? I'm not sure I do.
And those are the things, I think, asking a lot of questions and exposing that. And again, buyers and publishers having more of those direct conversations. And some of these curated deals could turn into, you get these insights in the early days, like we used to use a bid landscape report during the Magnite days of who's bidding. Oh, they're bidding a lot. They must like my inventory. I'm going to go direct to that buyer. So there's still a lot of those insights that can be had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think we have to be careful with the transparency of it all.
Yep.
We
Always.
have a habit in this industry of, if there's a way for me to do something shady, I probably am going to do it. So from a publisher standpoint, we're very wary of that fact. And so now I have this niggling thing in my head, like, do I have to ask my SSPs how they're prioritizing my inventory? Because actually my deals should be going first before the curated deals because I have a special rev share on that. And that's where it gets controversial.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you're questioning what is the role of the SSP today, right?
Yeah.
Moderator?
Ad network or publisher friendly? So we have a few more minutes. I'm going to ask a couple quick wrap-up questions. And then I think, Tyler, I don't know if we have time for questions for the audience. But so talk a lot about AI. We obviously talk about AI impacting our businesses negatively. But in a positive way, be really curious how you guys use AI in your day-to-day work lives, what tools you use. Might be some new tools for people to learn about to make your lives easier.
I don't. We're using AI in lots of different ways, but really, it helps me write stuff. I'm not a great writer.
Same.
I could sit here and pontificate all day long, but if somebody said, okay, now put that pontification on paper, forget it. So I use it a lot for writing.
Yeah, PowerPoints, summarizing decks, things like that. It is being built into more and more tools that we use, which is, I can see in maybe 8 months to a year what that's going to look like. Our BI tool is starting to get things built into it, and that's really where we need it. So that piece of it, we're just on the cusp, I think, of it really being like key into the team's kind of workflow versus now it's like, ooh, have you looked at that fun thing on ChatGPT? Like, have you done that kind of stuff? So.
Yeah, I've tinkered with ChatGPT to like try to figure out where to set a right price floor, right? It actually spits out something that's not completely nonsensical, but it's not robust enough to actually be helpful. But I don't know, it's fun. It's a good way to waste an hour on a Friday. What I really want to do, right, like at the weather company, we obviously have a team of meteorologists that have, we have years of weather forecasting data, and then obviously I've got years of like revenue data. I'd love to like dump all of that in one big AI bucket and just tell us, like, all right, if you can forecast the weather, can you please forecast our revenue? It's like a no-brainer, right? It's got to be able to do that. So, so no, we're not doing that today, but that's what I'm really excited to do something like that in the hopefully short term.
Nice. At Freestar, and I had never used a tool like this before, but we use Gong. There's all sorts of like note taker applications you can use, but it summarizes all of our calls. So I obviously can't be on all of our publisher calls or product calls. And sometimes I'll take those transcripts of those calls from the past month, and I will put that into a ChatGPT and just have it summarize key themes, which is nice. Just crunch tons of data. We have NPS scores with our publishers where they can give open feedback. Same thing, dump it into ChatGPT, and instead of reading all of them, you get really concise themes that can then be shared with product and can be shared with other people throughout the organization. Because you're swimming in data, it's a really nice way to consolidate all of that. So that's a way, Gong and then ChatGPT to summarize things has been incredibly helpful on my end. Okay. All right. Well, I was going to have it's going to end with a DOJ question, but maybe we've been DOJ'd out. So I think Ari's already done a good job summarizing all that, so we don't need to end there. Tyler, did you say we have time for questions or? Nope. We're done. We're going to be pulled off the stage. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for listening.